Rusty, before we begin, can you please do a quick favor for me?
Yeah, I'm sitting down. I'm closing my eyes. What do you need?
I need you to. Well, I don't know why you're closing your eyes.
I thought you were painting a picture here.
Well, it's appropriate because I was going to say, can you please forget all you know or think you know?
See?
Because Willow is actually wearing a wig in this film.
I'm shocked because that lush hair is not actually Warwick Davis's.
In fact, almost everyone, even the baby, almost everyone is wearing a wig.
That's even more shocking because, it was the 80s. Everyone had lush hair, and yet they couldn't get anybody to have real hair in this movie.
They could have called this film Wiggo.
This is how we're starting the show?
I've been planning that joke for weeks. Welcome to Viewmasters. Please rate and review the show. Actually, can I just say that we've gotten a few ratings recently.
Yeah.
So some of you have finally done it. And what a great review that person wrote. Rusty even texted me saying that I must have written this comprehensive review someone wrote. So to one of you out there, thank you. And the rest of you can get personalized shout outs like this when you write a review of Viewmasters on the iTunes store.
You know what? If you write us a nice review, we'll let you pick a future episode.
Wait, actually, that's okay. We will do that because I would love to have a random choice thrown at us.
I'm also happy to say that people are loving the Nightmare on Elm Street 4 episode.
Oh, big time. I've got so many messages about that.
How many from yourself? You're just sending yourself messages.
Well, they're from Freddie and they're written on the interior of my skin.
Wait, what does it say?
Fuck you, Peck. I'm like, Freddie, that's not even the right film. Rusty, I bet you read that the original title for this film, when George first started working on it back in 1972, was Munchkins.
That's kind of offensive. I'm not quite sure how that worked out because it would have just been called Munchkin because Willow is the driving force behind this film.
That's true. It really would have been elevating the role of Migosh and Von Carr and Burglecut to call it Munchkins. And quite famously, the origin of this film, George Lucas, like I said, started working on it in 1972 under the name Munchkins, but didn't really start working on it until he met young Warwick Davis on the set of Return of the Jedi. Now, here's he was, let me think, like mid-30s. Mid-30s.
It's George or him?
George.
Okay.
Warwick Davis was 11.
Yeah, but I'm saying, how did he have that part in mind for an 11-year-old? A family man on an adventure?
I mean, he hit it off with Warwick. They said that him and George hung out the entire time. And like George would not hang out with Harrison Ford or Carrie Fisher or Mark Hamill.
Yeah, because he's not one of the cool kids.
Can't sit here.
George famously could not find financing for Willow. He asked every studio, everyone turned him down. This is only a couple years after Return of the Jedi. He ended up having to pay for half of it himself, and the other half he got from Alan Ladd Jr. at MGM, who had been the guy at Fox during Star Wars, I'm pretty sure. So George was like, after all I've done for you, come on, Alan. And they stepped in. But it's funny to me because, when after George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney and he was walking off into the sunset, I bet those Disney executives, they said, man, there he goes. And then one of them said, the funny thing is we got that sucker to pay for almost all of his own films. Can you believe it? I mean, do you think Steven Spielberg's ever putting his own money into his movies? Hell no.
No.
George wrote the story for Willow, but he gave the screenplay duties to a writer named Bob Dolman, known for SCTV, and George Lucas really liked his work on WKRP in Cincinnati. You know what that means, Rusty?
What does it mean?
George was like, let me get a writer I could push around. This guy's from WKRP in Cincinnati. Okay.
What do you think that original screenplay looked like that George wrote? It had to be a disaster, right?
Oh, I bet.
Willow. Heroes come in all sizes. but adventure doesn't come any bigger than this.
I remember when this movie came out, I saw this in the theater. I bought the novelization. I bought the comic novelization. I was obsessed with it. And I had always, ever since I was a little kid, wanted that great fantasy movie. And, you know, I'd watched like Legend, I'd watched Dragon Slayer, I'd watched Krull, and I'd try to force myself to be like, oh, it's good. But, you know, you knew those weren't good. And Willow was the first one to like take a shot at being actually good.
Yeah, Willow definitely stood out. And you forgot to mention Lady Hawk. That was always a disappointment.
Wow, that's crazy because Lady Hawk I invented being into that actually.
Really? You're into Lady Hawk now?
I bought the novelization at a recent convention and I said to the guy, how much is this? He said $10. He might as well spit in my face because I know I could get this for like a quarter on eBay.
Damn you to hell.
But anyways, yeah, so Willow certainly stood out. I don't remember much promotions for it, but I think I just wound up in the theater. Like, remember the magic of being a kid? You would just wind up places and be like, oh, you're seeing this movie or you're doing this activity. And that was Willow for me. We just brought to the theater, sat down, you're watching this movie Willow. I was just like,
I remember I was in the lobby and it was the movie theater that became the Infinity dealership on Sunrise Highway. And it was packed and my father was like, look at this crowd, Edward. I think the critics are wrong. I think Willow is going to be the new Star Wars. And this guy overheard us and he was like, I'm seeing it for the second time. I love it. And my dad was like, it's going to be a great film. And
was your dad let down or did he love it?
No. He was so enthusiastic about everything. He was like, George Lucas did it again.
I know how to make movies. I went to film school. I have a knack for it. I studied it very well.
I think it has a little bit of everything. It has some action, romance, comedy, sex appeal. So it's got everything that I would like in a movie.
I agree that the brownies were erotic. Warwick Davis, even though he was, you know, the part was written for him, he still had to audition.
Interesting. Who else went out for that part?
Oh man, I can't even. I don't even want to imagine. Imagine Kenny Baker. He's in the pub with his friends. They're like looking at the newspaper. They're like, "Hey, Kenny, I see George is going to make a new film all about little people. You're going to be the star." And Kenny Baker is like, "Oh, I hope just to be included would be an honor. Just to be included." And then when George finally comes to him and he's like, I've got a part for you, Kenny. You're going to play a musician in the band in the background. Kenny Baker's like, I was in a fucking bin, George. You put me in a garbage can. And now I'm just a musician.
Where are all the musicians?
I was in a bloody bin.
Do you think he must have been depressed? He had to have been, right?
He must have went fucking ape shit. I mean, he was at the pub with his friends. He is pounding pints and they're just like, oh, you know, you're already think of all the kids you made happy as R2-D2. And he's like, they don't have any idea. It's me in there.
He was so mad. He teamed up with Jack Purvis to take on King Kong Bundy.
I asked George just for one scene where I come out of the R2-D2 and you see my face and I wave to the camera. Was that too much to ask, George?
You know what's really sad? I don't even know what Kenny Baker's voice sounds like. He's British, right?
Yeah. At the very beginning, I did try to do a British accent. I'm like hunched over like Gollum in my chair right now. This is my acting pose.
You know what? I was so absorbed by your passion for that I didn't even realize you weren't doing the right accent. You know, like how him and Anthony Daniels didn't get along. I'm sure he had to call them up. And left like
I think you mentioned this on a previous episode, but I don't know that. How do I not know that? They didn't get along?
Well, now they don't. Well, not anymore. But up until Kenny Baker's death, they didn't get along. Like Anthony Daniels refused to like be seen in public with him. How do you not know this?
I'm shocked. What is the story behind this? I think I detect a new season of the show Feud.
I to be honest, I don't really know, but I do know, I did read that like if they were doing a guest appearance or like a signing or something, Anthony Daniels refused to be like seated next to him or be in the same room with him and stuff. You know, I do have to admit though, when Willow came out, I was a bit apprehensive because I did have a bit of a fear of little people only because of
this is how we get canceled.
Issues that happened to me or events. I had a very bad experience watching Time Bandits at a neighbor's house.
Okay.
Because it was really my parents dropped me off because they went out to dinner with some friends, and it was getting late. So the people I was staying at put on Time Bandits, and I was just growing more fearful that something horrible happened to my parents. That's why they were so late. So anxiety was just building, and as anxiety was building, I was watching the Time Bandits in action, and I was getting horrified. So that was one event. The other event was at a circus. One of the little people in the show tried to grab me and bring me out onto like the area, and that would frighten any kid. It just happened to equate it to the little person.
That could have been your big break.
That could have been my big break, but two events traumatized for a bit. But then seeing Willow, I fell in love with the Nelwyns. I was on board.
I'm glad to hear it. It's funny the things that give you anxiety when you're a kid. Like you're freaking out thinking your parents were dead, and meanwhile your dad's like, "Should we look at the dessert menu? I don't know. I'm full, but let's see it." You know, speaking of little people, Val Kilmer, who played Mad Mardigan, of course, in this film, was only 4'11" when he entered high school. He acknowledged this on Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
That's so uninteresting, but I like.
Obviously, things have worked out so well for you, but it was tough growing up. I've heard this, when you got to high school, you were 4 feet 11 inches. Is that right?
Yeah, my son loves this. Like once a week, he reminds me that I was short.
And what? So you show up freshman year of high school and you were 4 feet 11. Did kids pick on you, or is it a tough time?
I was shy.
Right.
I'm still shy.
Right.
Even in front of you.
Is Val Kilmer known as a jerk? He seems like he's had a problematic reputation throughout the years.
He really did, especially I think around the Doors time when he was doing that.
I mean, I know in the great documentary Lost Soul about the making of Island of Dr. Moreau, he's portrayed pretty horribly in that.
Yeah, I think he's come around since his cancer scare.
Lives in New Mexico. He's done a lot for the New Mexico film industry.
Is that true?
I believe it is, yeah. No, I think that like the state incentive that they have, which is what led to Breaking Bad being shot in New Mexico. Originally, in the pilot for Breaking Bad, it takes place in like Riverside, California. Pretty sure that he was instrumental in getting that in place. So look at Val Kilmer.
It's funny if you think of all the big actors now. That was Val Kilmer in the 80s.
You know, Val Kilmer, they asked him, Val, was it fun to work on Willow? And he said, parts of it were. Little people are very funny. They already know that life is weird. So that was fun. My co-star, I ended up marrying. That was fun. We went to New Zealand and we went to Wales. All the traveling was fun, but wearing the pink dress wasn't fun. And that's Val Kilmer on Willow.
He does realize that was a part in the film that he had to wear the pink dress, right? It's not like
famously tempestuous romance with Joanne Whaley. Mm-hmm. Did I just say that correctly? Whaley?
I used to say Wally, but I think it's Whaley.
No, Wally's a robot, and he's a good friend of mine.
Nice.
But Rusty, this romance reached a tragic end. Did you read about this?
No, go on.
Val Kilmer, he found out about his divorce on CNN in a hotel room. Oh. Hard to get bad news in a hotel room. Joanne Whaley waited until he left for the island of Dr. Moreau to file the divorce papers. Ooh. But you know, Rusty, Val said he had a wild rebound. He had a wild rebound with a lady who was half giraffe. He said the good half.
What does that mean?
I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Wow, okay. Now, this movie opens up with a kind of, I've always found this shot a little off-putting of this baby. A little too wet, the baby.
So it begins. It's already bothered. Is that as when you first saw it, or is this recent viewing?
This is a feeling that has stayed with me. Oh. Everything else has changed, but just that one feeling of disgust.
You mentioned anxiety, the weird things that give you anxiety as a kid. For you, it was seeing the wet Alora Dannon.
The wet baby, and then Sorsha is the first major character we see.
The omen is true. I must tell my mother.
Why is she wearing those overalls?
Why is she wearing overalls?
She's wearing overalls and like a white kind of long sleeve shirt.
Yeah. What was her official position besides being the daughter of the queen? She seemed to be in charge of the general. So was she like higher up than that?
I looked this up. This is actually based on a real medieval position that they had in the hierarchy back then. It was known as the Ivanka.
What's that mean?
known as the Ivanka.
What's the Ivanka?
Ivanka Trump.
That's the joke.
Bavmorda, obviously kind of doing like a Snow White evil witch kind of thing. Played by Jean Marsh. Now, Rusty, you're going to love this. Jean Marsh, she's still alive.
I know. I looked that up. You know, when I looked her up, I saw that she played Mombi in Return to Oz.
Mhm.
Holy shit, did that scare me as a kid. Remember that hall of heads? Dorothy like wakes her up and she's like running down the hallway, like just as the headless witch. Man, that was a thing of nightmares. I think that was the most terrifying thing for me as a kid, maybe next to Superman 3.
I believe I'll lock you in the tower for a few years till your head is ready. And then I'll take it.
I believe you will not.
Speaking of scary things, you might recall she gets hit by the truck in The Changeling. And
Yeah, she was the wife.
I remember, I think I was with you. It was like 2 a.m. We were like 18 years old and we came across The Changeling on cable. I had no idea what it was. And I remember watching that opening scene with George C. Scott and having no idea that truck was going to plow into his family. And then just getting so afraid by the rest of the film.
You know what's funny about Changeling? I bought that after we watched it on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
And the graininess of the VHS gave it such an appeal that when Blu-ray became a thing, I bought that. And with the clarity of Blu-ray, it looked like such a shitty film. Like it didn't have any of that tension or the scares. It was just like a clean looking movie. It was such a disappointment.
Jean Marsh also had another notable role.
Did she?
She was the robot in the episode of The Twilight Zone, The Lonely. If you remember the episode where the guy who is like alone on the planet for like a crime and they bring him a robot and he eventually falls in love with it.
I don't think that's a Twilight Zone episode. I think that's your life.
I can feel loneliness too.
The music from Willow, hugely popular. This music
Really?
has been used and reused in a lot of film trailers. So
I
it
thought-
might sound familiar to people.
I think it's corny. I don't love the music. I love the Nelwyn Village music.
Those dogs. Wow.
What are they? Devil dogs?
Whatever they are, they're effectively done. They're
believe you-
effectively done.
I believe you once had a run-in with a devil dog.
We're not telling that story on this podcast. And the dogs, whenever people put dogs in a costume and then the dogs, I'm always fooled. I always think, wow, great job.
So you were full. You thought they were animatronics?
No, I thought they were actual, like, fantasy world monster things. One more thing about, the baby is born. We find out that there's this prophecy. A baby is going to destroy Queen Bavmorda. And a midwife runs away with this baby, Laura Dannon. And she's getting pursued by these monstrous dogs. Now, the thing I have to point out in this scene, even the baby is wearing a wig.
Yeah.
Once I found that out, now it's so obvious.
Do you think wigs have come a long way in 2019 where you could pull that off?
I can't say that I know enough about wigs.
Wait, is that confirmed that Mad Mardigan or Val Kilmer was wearing a wig?
He's the only person. I'm driving to New Mexico tonight. I have to ask him. I did a tiny bit of Googling, but I couldn't figure it out. I mean, it seems like if anyone's wearing a wig, he's got to be wearing a wig.
I thought it was just extensions, like the ponytail part was this. But I think
there
his hair,
are at least extensions involved.
Saoirse was wearing a wig because of one of the scenes when you could see that it's a wig.
She was wearing a wig too?
Yeah.
Wow, everyone's in wigs.
Her hair doesn't look anything like that, I don't think. If she's not wearing a wig, then it's just the lighting looks weird.
I do have to say that her hair kind of dated the film for me in a way,
Oh, but
like
her hair's fantastic.
Yeah, but in like a later scene where she's sleeping, she's like in full makeup and has like heavy metal big hair.
That's what they were doing it. Wait, we don't even know what time period this film takes place in, so maybe that was the look of that world.
Man, what a coincidence that it was the exact style of the time that they made the movie in. So then the baby, it floats down the river. It floats down the river and it gets found by Willow and his kids. Now, there's always the lines that stick with you. For some reason, when Willow's daughter says, "Oh, she's so cute," that has been in my head forever.
Can you do the rest of the episode in the voice of Mims?
Oh, she's so cute.
Wait, so that bothered you?
No. I love it.
Oh.
I'm,
Oh,
I'm
you
saying that like that's something that when I first saw the film, that got in my brain, and it's been in my brain ever since. Like when I see a cute thing, I hear,
Oh, she's so cute.
You know the male son, Rannon, I think was his name. He was a cute little kid, right?
a bit of a cuck, if I'm being honest.
Can we keep it, Dada?
Oh my goodness! You know he grew up to be an author and writes novels on atheism. Interesting change of events in his life.
Writes novels on atheism.
Not atheism. He writes books, not novels. So the one thing I want to say about Bab Morta,
Mm-hmm.
she was so hell bent on that prophecy, but surely she would be dead by the time Alora hit the age of taking over.
I don't know. Jean Marsh is still alive now.
That is true, but her character was aged.
Like she should have realized that the baby was going to like fuck her over in some less obvious way.
So you're saying it was always written, no matter what she tried, she was fucked because of the prophecy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't make these rules. You know, the people who created the Final Destination film series are the ones who make these rules. I'm just the guy hiding in my closet from the blender.
I don't even know. Wait. Well, her druid sidekick was right when he said
Her
Saoirse
what? Her what?
Druid. her Rasputin-esque character did confirm that Saoirse would betray her, and she didn't believe that.
The funny thing about these evil advisors that always like in every movie they have like the Rasputin-esque advisor character, but the evil person never listens to them. They should be like, oh, the last evil guy I worked with did not listen to the prophecy. He thought it was complete. He was like, no man born of woman could kill me. I'm fine. Told him it wasn't going to work out. And Bad Water's just the same.
Mm-hmm.
You could see Trump hiring seers like this and then being like, I don't believe you.
You know what I wonder though? Was Saoirse always like soft, or did she become that way because of her mother's constant chastisement?
Well, according to the extended lore, Saoirse's father, great guy,
And he was a good friend.
he is one of the people who's frozen in Tir Asleen. And he was a very positive influence on Saoirse. But then he got frozen and, you know, so it seems like Saoirse is like a pretty good to begin with.
This is sounding more like the Star Wars universe now, where there's too many coincidences that her father was frozen, but a good influence. And how long was he frozen for? Because they were under the impression that everyone was still alive in Tir Asleen.
Oh yeah, there's only 6 people on this planet and they all know each other.
You know, I want to say, don't get too attached to Tir Asleen, because in the next book, Tir Asleen gets destroyed. So
that's really fucked up. Now, I have to say, so one of my big complaints about the movie is just Willow's character in the early going.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it doesn't seem in character for Willow to be like, I want nothing to do with this baby.
We'll push it downstream and forget we ever saw it.
He doesn't even take the baby out of the river.
No.
I'm like, that baby could just float away. And so it's such a fake arc because so soon after that, they have Willow liking the baby. So it was all for nothing. I feel like they could have done something a little different with Willow's character here in the early going that would have really helped.
Like what? Do you have a suggestion?
Well, it's kind of contradictory that he wants nothing to do with this baby, which is from the outside world. Yeah, he wants to be a magician and seems like he has interest in things beyond the village. You know what I mean? So it's like, is he a homebody or does he dream of a bigger world?
Well,
and he already has a family, so it doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy who would just leave a baby in a river.
Well, we already know he's a shit farmer anyway. So,
well, he's a shit farmer, but Burglecut controls the seeds, much like Monsanto. This is a very relevant film.
Mm. Wait, so you think Burglecut's just a monster?
It was hard for me to focus on anything except for Burglecut's hair because I was like, is this a mirror?
I like the name Burglecut. That's a good name.
It is. You know, in the New York Times review of Willow, they single out Burglecut and some of the other names, saying these are not classic names like George gave us in Star Wars. But I was like, Burglecut's actually a pretty good name, and I remember it right now, just like I remember Migosh.
Yeah, Migosh is a great name, and Valkar.
That one's was he the warrior guy?
Yeah, the only thing with Valkar, or Vonkar, I think it is. Am I saying it wrong? Von Car. That's what it is.
Because at one point it sounds like Burgle Cut says Bonkar with a B.
The actor Tony Cox plays one of the warriors in the village, and his name in the credits is Von Car Warrior. So that confused me because are the warriors called Von Cars or is that the character's name? But one of the things Burgle Cut says is after they kill the devil dog, he says that whoever's looking for them, they're not going to give up their search until they find what they're looking for. So he does. I think Burgle Cut cares about the village and the villagers. I think Willow is a bit like you said. He has aspirations outside the village. So Willow's kind of a shit villager and pretty much only cares about himself. Like even with the farming, he like Burgle Cut says that he's late with planting the seeds, which any farmer would know that's a horrible thing to do because the crops will fail.
I was also very offended by that. Now, here's my question.
Go for it.
Now we're in the party scene in the village, there is a song playing. What is this? This song sounded so familiar. Like it sounds like it's the Blues Traveler song that became popular. Like it sounds so familiar.
Well, you know what's interesting? The musicians are made up of some Little People actors, Kenny Baker, Malcolm Dixon, and Jack Purvis, who are all in the Time Bandits. You know who did get a part, but it's uncredited, is Rusty Goff. And I always like that. I always like that actor because we share the same name. But Rusty Goff was an actor that actually no, he's still alive. So he was in Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, not in the Temple of Doom.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
He was one of the Oompa Loompas, but he's also in Star Wars as one of my favorite characters, the Gonk droid, which is that boxy droid.
Oh, I know the Gonk. I invented being into that. Now you're ripping me off.
No, the Gonk droid. Do you know what the purpose of the Gonk droid is? Because it seems pretty useless.
Oh, they were just made for laughs. The Empire made them for laughs. You know, the Emperor he went on record. He said that their sense of humor was not very sophisticated.
Wait, but was the Gonk droid even on the Death Star?
No, it was on Tatooine, but they got sick of the joke and they sent it to the desert.
So anyway, in the village, Willow's hiding this baby from everyone. He doesn't want to quite reveal what they found.
Mm-hmm.
But does take part in the village celebration, their festival. Very important to him. He wants to be made an apprentice to the, what is the character's name? The High Aldwin? What is he, like the town sorcerer? He's like the kook, though, of the village.
Sometimes your town needs a short Gandalf. Now, he has the famous line,
"Forget all you know, or think you know."
This was also the tagline, one of the taglines of the film. Not that great of a tagline.
No.
The other tagline was like, adventure comes in all sizes. It's like, these are not great taglines, George.
I went to film school.
The test, which finger is the power to change the world in?
I would have fucked that up. I would have had the confidence of the first guy picking and then the self-loathing of Willow afterwards. Would you have picked one of his fingers or would you have figured it out?
No, as a kid, I would have done exactly like what Willow does, where it's just like you pick another shitty finger, which obviously is not going to be. Like, oh.
Surely Willow should have figured out that after the other two failed. He should have figured there was a different direction.
But Warwick Davis plays that moment kind of nicely. You see that he's thinking about his own finger. I mean, maybe a little too obviously.
Wait, before you continue, since you said about too obviously, do you think Warwick Davis was good in this film, his acting? Because he was a disappointment in Leprechaun 4 that we watched.
It's weird because there's moments where I see him and I'm like, that is just bad. But can you really imagine Willow with anyone else? Not really.
Yeah, he was born for that part. I was just going to say, you know what's interesting? Do you know how tall Warwick Davis is?
How tall?
I don't know. But there's a comparison chart of him standing next to Peter Dinklage, and it's crazy to see the size difference. And then there's a picture of Warwick Davis standing next to Vern Troyer, and there's an incredible size difference.
Well, who's bigger, who's smaller?
Vern Troyer is the smallest. I think Vern Troyer was 2'11". I think Warwick Davis is in the 3s, and then Peter Dinklage, I think, is around 4'7" or 4'8".
Oh wow!
So, but if you have to look or anyone out there has to look up these images because it's really crazy to see.
Now, when these dogs attacked the village, I have to say, this awakened something primal in me. I think in a past life, I was in a village that was attacked in this way. Like Conan the Barbarian, like that same kind of situation. I was in. It's like it's in my DNA.
You would have been Mims crying. Yeah, Mom.
Yeah, right. I would have been swinging my sword wildly. I'm going down, but I'm taking a lot of them with me.
I killed them. I killed them all.
After seeing that it took 4 warriors to take down one devil dog,
They're dead.
it makes you realize how weak this village is. It's amazing that they were able to survive for so long, because anybody that came along could have just wiped them out pretty easily. Any Daikini group, any clan.
You know, they kill the devil dog with spears.
Mm.
You know, spears are the great underrated weapon in history. Spears so much more prominent than swords. Spears were used way, way more than swords. And such a bummer, you know. It turns out history's just fucking boring. So after the attack by the devil dogs, and there's the scene where they're trying to determine what they're going to do. A very Lord of the Rings scene where Migosh volunteers to go. I mean, that's just so shameless.
I'll go with him.
But I love when the High Elwyn has Burglecut go right after Burglecut said that the warrior is going to stay there, and then the scene ends with Burglecut going, "Bunker!"
That's actually pretty funny. I like that moment.
Bunker!
But yeah, so it's much like Lord of the Rings, where the hobbits set out. That's the same thing we have here.
Oh yeah. There's a shot where it's a little bit later, but there's a shot where from far away they're going over a log between like 2 cliffs.
Oh my god, yeah.
That looks so much like Lord of the Rings, and it looks like the art that was surrounding Lord of the Rings from way before the film too. So it's so shameless.
Yeah, even when they're being like chased by, what are they called? Not the devil dogs, the army. I forgot.
Oh yeah, that is so reminiscent of like the Ringwraith scene being the first thing they encounter.
Yeah. What the hell? What were they called though?
But so when Willow's leaving his family and the High Elwyn gives him those acorns, I feel like Willow should have doubted this a little. He should have been like, some of your stuff's legit and some of it's obviously not legit. So these acorns, are they real or not?
I'm going to correct you on one thing though, because Willow's a firm believer. So I think that was to give him confidence that if he ever got into trouble, he had something to fall back on. Because Willow was already second guessing himself. And if he's going on this journey, you need him to be strong. You need him to believe in himself. And this was just the right tool to get him there.
It's true. The other day on the plane, I saw a guy had a shirt on that said, "Mindset is everything." I thought, okay, I got to keep that in mind.
So are you a believer now? You know, as far as magic goes, how much were you into magic as a kid? Were you a bit naive like me, where you believed that there was different like echelons of magic, where there were the shit ones that were fake, but then like there were the ones that, yeah, that's legit what they're doing. That's the real deal.
I remember seeing David Copperfield at like somewhere.
Really?
And I was like, okay, like some of that stuff is probably tricks, but at least one of the tricks is real.
Wait, so he has a little bit of real magic thrown in there, but he's just like, I don't have an hour's worth of real magic, maybe 5 minutes. Do you remember the magic shop? I think it was located in like Hicksville, Long Island.
Oh, yes, yes.
And they had a bunch of tricks you can buy, which I always wanted to buy like the top, not the top, but like the mid-tier stuff that was like maybe like $50 a trick.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it looked a little better. So I was just like, oh, I can surely make some money, make my money back performing these tricks on the streets.
I remember being in there and a magician guy was talking to the guy who worked there. And he was like, yeah, I'm working on a trick where I tear up a note and then I use a vacuum and I suck it up and then I take the note out and it's fully put back together. And as a little kid,
I'm so impressed by that now.
As a little kid, I was like, how would he do that? And ever since then, I've always thought, like, I see a vacuum, I think of that guy in the magic shop, and I think, how is he going to do it?
That's your journey. You have to find that out. You know what's really funny, though? I'll watch, like, Penn and Teller's, what's the show called?
Bullshit? Yeah,
Bullshit. No, not Bullshit. The one that's on, like, ABC. It's the network show. Fool Us. The FU show. And basically they have magicians go on there and they perform a trick and they have to try to fool them with how they did the trick. I don't know if you know the show. But every time I watch it on like YouTube clips, I'm just like, how the fuck did they do that? And then I read the comments. I'm just like, how did I not figure that out? That's so easy. And I can never figure out the tricks. Just like goes way over my head as an adult.
Magic is the bloodstream of the universe.
Now, when Willow's daughter says, me too, Dada,
I hated
that. For some reason, is another line from a movie that has been in my head ever since I saw it.
Me too, Dada.
You found that cute or annoying?
No, like annoying, but it's just like one of those things that I always remember. Like when I was watching this movie again, like right before she said it, I was like, in my head, I heard, me too, Dada.
I'd be like, why do you want to go? You'd be useless. You'd be killed immediately.
Me too, Dada.
But I got to tell you, one of the most moving moments in cinema, one of the most moving things I've ever seen, when Kaya gives Willow the hair. Now this is, what a gift. What a gift. Simply a magic moment. I dream of meeting someone who will give me a good amount of hair.
I'm just picturing you in this scene, and like the next scene later, it's just like taped to the top of your head. You filled in a patch.
But I just want to say that if, I am, if right now I'm talking to someone that I'm dating in the future and they're listening to this podcast, please give me the gift of hair. This Christmas, this could be November. I could be dating someone. I could be in love. And they could be listening to this to find out more about me. And what I want for Christmas is a braid of your hair. And for you to not listen to the Life Force episode. And
yeah, that's a good one.
Here comes a big moment. I think I might be one of the first people. I was Googling this. I can't find anything about it. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. When they're trying to decide where they're going to go, the High Elwyn throws up a rock, which becomes a bird. Yeah. Now, did you notice that this bird really seems to go from a dove to a pigeon? Like it transforms from one type of bird to another as it flies away. Did anyone else notice this?
Did anyone else? How many people are in the room with us?
Now, when the baby pukes, this was a great moment when the baby pukes on Burgle Cut. This was based on a real life incident because one of the 3 babies that played Laura Dannon puked on Warwick Davis, and the cast and crew were cracking up so hard. And George said, that's got to go in the film. I love it. And Ron Howard was like, hey, George, if you like it, it's going in.
God. Come on, Ron Howard. stand up to your boss.
Well, just to be clear, I don't know. Maybe Ron Howard did. He could have been like, George, you motherfucker. I'm going to fucking kill you, George. What if that's his personality? We had no idea.
I like that.
So now they're on the road.
They're on the road.
And now we cut to the castle where Bavmorda is sending out General Kale and Sorsha. Now this is a big moment for me.
The baddies.
Because
we get to see the baddies.
Because here's the thing. I want to be Sorsha. Like I look at her gear, like her helmet, which is like a samurai helmet, her arrows coming out, which is cool. Her sword, which kind of has like the sawtooth thing going on, which I would really like that. I want to be Sorsha, but if I'm being honest, I'm Kale.
I want to be Kale. I want to be Kale for Halloween. I
thought that would be a sick costume.
Yeah, I always thought that skull mask was awesome.
What is the skull of?
Probably a fictional creature, I would assume.
Yeah, because it looks like a ape kind of thing. It's not. It's like not a human skull.
Maybe one of those trolls. You know what I hate about George Lucas films? They always manage to tie in a character, like a beastly character, into an insult. Since I mentioned the trolls, like one of the insults is where somebody calls somebody troll dung.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in Star Wars, they call him bantha fodder. It's like, come on. I don't know. It just bothers me.
Yeah, that's a reasonable thing to be enraged about.
Mildly perturbed is what I would go with. But anyways, Sorsha's outfit, even though it's like armor, it's still kind of sexy. Like that breastplate she's wearing, just the all black.
No spoilers, but she later gets a even sexier breastplate.
Really?
Noticed her costume change kind of late in the film, where she has a bit of a like see-through thing happening.
Oh. I gotta go watch that now. I've asked you this every freaking episode that we do about female characters. You were definitely attracted to Sorsha as a kid, right?
I really was. She was like my awakening. My awakening. It's all gone now, though. It's all gone now.
Really? What the hell happened to you?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just asexual now. But I was
watching Willow with Jen, and even Jen was just like, "Oh, Joanne Whale is very attractive." It was just like, "Yes, she is."
Well, she has kind of a Jen quality. Her face
Really?
looks a little similar. People always they can't see who they look like, so they always like people they look like. That's a compliment. Jen should like that. Jen, rate and review the show.
She already did. I already got there. You know, one thing before we jump ahead, it just made me think of where you talked about the Willow NES game, which is very solid.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better NES games that definitely stands the test of time. But you know what was absolutely horrible that no kid wanted? The Willow action figures, which were really action figures. They were just pretty much pieces.
You can bring the magic of Willow home with collectible figures, vehicles, and accessories, each sold separately. Willow, the magic lies within.
Every movie that had figures or toys that came out, they always did articulated figures. So why did they decide to go with, we're doing a fantasy film, let's go with something like a D&D figure? Not a figure, but you know what I mean, the pieces for the role-playing game.
There must be some issue with the likeness rights or something like that, because I feel like NECA would have made these toys by now. I bet Willow toys would do pretty well. You know, I know you don't use Twitter that much, but the guy from NECA, Randy, is so interactive on Twitter and he'll answer everyone's questions. So it's very fun to troll this guy by suggesting like something completely obscure, being like, "Oh, make Mayor Whittingham's character from Miracle Mile," and he's like, "There's no market for that."
I think I'm a bit naive, but I believe there could be a market for a Mayor Whittingham figure.
Oh, dude, I'm actually selling wigs. That's what I'm doing.
Could be too. What would be the something that you would have, would have no chance of being made, but a toy you would love to see, like a good quality one?
Well, I don't know why I'm thinking about this right now, but I would like a Splatterhouse figure. Why have they never made those? Or maybe they have, and I have no idea.
What about Bonk? I feel like you would like a Bonk figure.
Dude, I'm having myself shrunken down to be a Bonk figure. I don't even know. Now we get to the crossroads. Now the crossroads, this is a long scene, huh? This scene is like 7 or 8 scenes.
I like the scene though, but why did they pick the crossroads to bring the baby to? Because it seemed like a desolate area.
I mean, if you think that's desolate, you should check out My Love Life.
And who's hanging in the crow's cage there?
Just my confidence. But really, the whole thing with Mad Mardigan in the cage and like the long process of getting him out and trusting him really feels like something out of a samurai movie. Seeing that samurai movie influence again from George Lucas is great to see.
Don't you think that he's seeing Mad Mardigan? He's a little like Yoda, like fun at first, but then he becomes serious.
I could see that. You know, people said that George ripped off Star Wars for Willow, but he was very clever with the Yoda element because he hid Yoda in several different characters. There's a little bit of Yoda in the High Aldwin. There's a little bit of Yoda in Finn Rizal, especially when she's the possum. And there's some in Mad Mardigan here.
Yes. So is basically George is a one-trick pony?
No, he's like a 5-trick pony. But he, luckily, thanks to spreading the Yoda out, was like an 8-trick pony here.
Okay. And that's what makes him a billion-dollar genius. Can you picture anybody else as Mad Mardigan?
Louise Lasser.
Another Louise Lasser moment. I like it.
We've actually got a friend of the podcast who's currently taking classes with Louise Lasser, going to her apartment once a week.
What kind of classes? What's she teaching? Wait, whoa. What's she teaching?
Baking. Acting, obviously acting. Baking was a reference to her drunken baking in Blood Rage.
You should not drink and bake.
You know, the one thing though I have to say, how you say pointed out that Val Kilmer is probably wearing a wig.
Mm-hmm.
In this scene though, it looks like he's wearing fake eyebrows, or they were heavily dyed. He just looks weird. I know he's supposed to be dirty, but he looks a bit different. And his teeth are like his teeth are all like cruddy, but the next day when they wake up, his teeth are like magically very white.
Knockout dentistry. It's great if you have that fear.
Yeah. But the other thing is now, is this the first time that we hear the term peck thrown around from Mad Mardigan?
I believe it is.
Quite used a lot, derogatory term for the Nelwyn villagers.
It raises an interesting conundrum because it seems so offensive that I don't know if we should be saying the word peck on here.
But the thing that's strange to me is that the Nelwyn village is pretty isolated, but all walks of life know the term for them.
Man.
So it seems, but even like the queen refers to him as a peck.
I mean, it's sad because you read between those lines. There must have been a few people who left that village and then came back, and they're like, "Woohoo! You won't imagine the kind of discrimination we get out there. They all know about us. I don't know how."
That's how I was thinking the movie ended. Like when Willow returns to his village, and they're like, "How was your journey?" And he's just like, "A lot of racist dickheads out there."
Yeah, exactly.
even my friend that I made along the way referred to me as a peck. Hey. But yeah. So in this scene, though, Mad Mardigan is locked up in a crow's cage for undetermined reason. They never quite say, right?
He's the guy that gave us those 19 one-star reviews.
He deserves it then.
He does. Please rate and review the show. Now, when he says, "Oh, it's about 1,000 fools when the army is approaching," this is actually true historically. Medieval armies were much smaller than modern armies. The famous Battle of Hastings, only 3 guys.
That's a good joke.
A little history lesson for you.
You know, it's funny though. I guess this is a point where the other Nelwyn villagers, they leave to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just Migosh and Willow on their own now. So Mad Mardigan's trying to plead with him to let him out, and he'll take the baby, but they don't quite trust him yet. And then is it where they're woken up by that army coming through? And Willow asks one of them. He says, "Sir, can you help me?"
Oh,
I
yeah.
just like, out of my way, Peck.
Willow seems so stupid here.
We found one of your babies in our village. Will you please take care of her?
It's like, come on. I know you've been isolated, but this is an army walking by, and you're like, "Can you please take this baby?"
Yeah.
Now, after the army passes, and Mad Mardigan's trying to convince them to let him out, and he says he'll take care of the baby, Migosh says,
I believe you would, Willow.
"Really?" One small gripe. When they let Mad Mardigan out of the cage, and his first line is,
I feel better!
I've always hated it, even since I was a kid. Like, that line sounds like this movie was made in a different language and then awkwardly translated to English. I feel better. I just don't think that he would say that.
But you have to say Mad Mardigan was very charming in these scenes. Like when he pretends to sob.
Oh, yeah.
And then like he instantly like changes his tone.
I have a very small complaint here, but when the scene ends and they're like, "Oh, you're going to take care of Lord Dannon?" And he goes, "I give you my word of honor." Then the very next scene, Willow and Migosh are walking, and the scene ends with basically setting up like that things have gone wrong. Like Migosh is like, "I'm sure it's fine." And then the brownies come flying in. It's the very exact same ending as the Mad Mardigan scene. They should have just cut. Anyway, it's not important.
Yeah.
But the walking scene kind of felt like a filler scene.
I just hate the coincidence of that. They just happened to mention that about the baby. And then the baby's all of a sudden there. Like the brownies are just carrying the baby as they're mentioning it.
No one likes the brownies. This is one of the big flaws of the film.
Yeah. Even as a kid, hated the brownies.
Me too. Wow. Even as a kid, the effects are so bad. They have no weight to them.
No.
Like, they don't seem like they're in the physical space at all with what's happening. I would sooner believe if I was watching the news and they had like the news graphic on the bottom saying who the reporter was and stuff, I'd sooner believe that was actually really there than I would these little people. But, you know, during the off hours from shooting, Kevin Pollak and Rick Overton, who played the brownies, they hit up a bar in San Rafael, California, where they ended up performing improv. One of the audience members noticed he got up on stage too. That person was Robin Williams.
Yeah,
Pollak, he was already a fan of Williams. He just stepped back just to watch Williams perform.
I get Rob. I mean, I think Robin Williams is a great actor, but never was that into his comedy. You heard it here first.
Wow. The Gulliver's Travel scene where they like tie up Willow and Migosh, that looks.
Yeah, how many times has that been done?
Yeah, that looks awful. George, fix that.
Yeah. When they cut him out of it, when Kevin Pollak's character cuts him out, it doesn't even look like he's hitting the right part of the rope.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it looks
so
horrible. It looks like, you know what it looks like? It looks like the hologram video game Time Traveler.
Oh, yeah. It does look like that.
Do you know that Time Traveler was created by the same guy who created Dragon's Lair? No, not Don Bluth. Rick Dyer. Now, this guy, Rick Dyer, he became a realtor in Julian, California. So I'm going to move there and buy a house there. And he's going to be like, oh, believe it or not, I used to make video games. And I'm like, no, I believe it. That's why I moved to Julian, California. And he's going to be like, well, that's extreme.
That is extreme. Do you even like those games?
No, that's why it's weird.
You know what the brownies reminded me of?
What?
And it has to be George Lucas kind of evolved the brownies into Jar Jar Binks' character. They're so similar.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they really are.
And there's a line that friend Gene says that sounds exactly like Jar Jar Binks when after Mad Mardigan and Willow are taken prisoner and they've fallen behind the two brownies and they're trying to figure out what they should do. And friend Gene says,
Are you suggesting we go home?
And it's just like Jar Jar Binks.
His voice is actually the exact Berger of Jar Jar Binks and the racist Asian alien from the Trade Federation. The guy who's like, you think they expect an attack? Like, if you take Fran Jean's voice and split it in two, it becomes those two characters.
Do you think if you could create a time machine, would you go back and stop this character, Rick Overton, this actor, and then we would never get Jar Jar Binks or the racist Trade Federation guy?
It's not the first thing I would do, but it's in the top 500. So that's saying something.
Stop Hitler, take out Rick Overton.
Well, for some reason I thought I could only go back to like the 80s. Like I could only go back to when I was alive.
Oh, okay. So wait, I want to know now. What's the first thing you're doing before you're taking out Rick Overton?
Man, I'm showing up to the Challenger launch with like a backseat full of like mint on card G.I. Joe figures. And I'm like, stop the shuttle.
I don't even know what that means, but I like it.
I don't know either.
People just be like, this kid is crazy. Wait, are you an adult going back in time? I guess you are, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm my age.
They just beat you with your figures. I'd love to see that image.
I was so bad. Yes. Oh,
do you think George Lucas credits Rick Overton and Kevin Pollak for creating Jar Jar Binks? Do you think he was like, oh, I like their accent. I like what they're doing there. I'm going to make a character based around them and be as annoying as them as well as these brownies.
They get an elaborate fruit basket every Christmas.
You know what's funny about the brownies, though? They're even hated in the movie. In that world, everyone...
Oh, yeah.
You are crawling with brownies.
I hate brownies!
You know one thing that's always bothered me?
What's that?
When Willow goes into the inn and he's doing his horrible routine again where he's like, do you want this baby?
And well, I hate the line because he's like, can you spare some milk? It's like, that's your opening line.
Could you spare some milk for this poor hungry baby?
Yeah, like he has got no situational awareness, but I've always hated that small complaint. But the woman who says, get out of here, P word, and then throws, like, she grabs lettuce out of a bowl and throws it at him, but it's just like iceberg lettuce. I'm like, what are we supposed to believe that she was eating? That she just pulled this handful of lettuce out.
I don't know what his game plan was. There's a lot of blunders by Willow in this movie where, like, they're being chased. I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but when they're being chased on the horses in the cart scene, and he's like yelling at Mad Mardigan to slow down because there's a baby. It's just like, slow down and what? Get killed? Like,
yeah, that only I let's get to that in a second, but I hate that moment. You know what I don't hate though? When the brownie falls in love with the cat. This cracked me up.
Really? Why?
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory.
How does that love potion work exactly? Because it gets onto what's his name, Rule?
Yeah, it gets onto the functioning of the love potion is actually quite offensive in our modern culture.
Yes.
Because we see that the brownie can fall in love with a cat, but when Mad Mardigan gets it, it's not like he feels it when he sees Willow.
No.
Only when he sees Sorsha does it kick in.
Well, they use the love potion as a comical effect in this movie, but in reality, it's basically, you know.
Now, when Willow falls through the plank into the room where Mad Mardigan is.
Small world.
Small world.
Not you!
Where the hell did you come from?
I knew I shouldn't have trusted you.
Don't I know you?
They really said you at the end of a lot of sentences in that scene.
Really? I don't remember that.
Trust me, they you. And he's been having a, what's the word? Dalliance with this lady. and not very attractive. You think Madmartigan could do better. And then her husband comes home. This guy was a Mark Boone Jr. impersonator.
I don't know who that is.
He's a character actor who you've seen in a lot of films. He's been in so many things. He's even been in a movie I did.
Really?
So I saw him at a convention and I was like, oh my God, I should go home and like get a DVD of Blackout and be like, hey, can you sign this? And he'll be like, what the hell? I don't remember this movie at all. You definitely know the guy though. He looks just like this guy. He's got like a beard, long hair. He's in Batman Begins.
That character is very offensive. He like immediately tries to seduce Madmartigan as the woman.
Oh yeah.
But he like wouldn't take no for an answer. And then he's just like, let's breed.
Oh yeah. That was kind of a shocking, word to use, but the way that Val Kilmer plays it, where he's like, I don't know, no, or whatever he says, is actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
So things in here, though, becomes a huge set piece where there's a number of sequences in this movie that are pretty satisfying. I think they're pretty fun and they're pretty Spielbergian, but like JV Spielberg, but still pretty fun.
And which scene are you referring to? Is that whole scene?
Well, basically this whole sequence where Saoirse comes in.
Oh, yeah.
And then she's like, you're no woman. And the fight breaks out. And then they escape on the horse carriage thing.
But there's always a movie. These movies always have that scene where the guy that's been duped gets outraged and like inadvertently saves the day. Like there's
exactly.
Oh, did you meet Lug, the husband? And he just like starts punching. Just like, oh, that's how they got out of this situation because they would have surely been captured.
So kind of like you said, at the end of this chase, Willow's like, you don't go that fast with a baby. And you're like, Willow, you were previously leaving a baby in a river. Now you're trying to come to a stop during a high-speed chase. You're making no sense here.
His decision making is poor because he was also going into like a tavern and asking for milk, which surely could get you knifed or something.
Then we cut back to the scene with Bab Morda is such like a I don't even know how to describe it. Just a fake scene. It's like a scene you write in a script where you're like, I guess I should cut back to these people. And you're like, oh, but they're not really doing anything. And you're like, have Bab Morda say,
Find the child. Find the child.
I feel like they could have been doing better stuff with Bab Morda because like a lot of times they cut to her and she's doing nothing. She's just like, find them.
Yeah. You've let me down for the last time. It's like,
I mean, even that they could have given like, she didn't have like a big moment, like Darth Vader moment where she like strangles someone. Like she could have had that.
No, she didn't really do much. She slaps General Kale, I think, or hits him in the face.
That's why he wears the helmet.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't mention that General Kale, who he's named after. Did you look that up?
Oh, yes. Named after Pauline Kael. Very petty, George. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, her review of Star Wars wasn't so kind.
I thought she liked Star Wars. I don't remember that.
She did, but she had some comments about it.
What'd she say?
I had a couple of snippets here. She said, it's a film that's totally uninterested in anything that doesn't connect with the mass audience. There's no breather in the picture, no lyricism. The only attempt at beauty is in the double sunset. It's enjoyable on its own terms, but it's exhausting too, like taking a pack of kids to the circus.
Oh my God, she was at that same circus where the little person tried to bring you on stage. Oh my God, no wonder she hates circuses and Star Wars so much.
I like the sigh.
Man, but Rusty, longtime listeners know this. Not new listeners might not know this. You were actually in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true. It's true. Rusty played an Ugnaught. No makeup required.
Y chunta.
How rude.
I mean, I've grown distant from Star Wars franchise, but the first one is awesome. It's such a good movie.
You know, you've grown distant. I've grown closer. I've actually been stowing away. I've been stowing away in Galactic Edge for the last week, just hiding when it closes in the Millennium Falcon storage area.
Wow, that's what you're doing.
That's where I've been.
It's come to life.
I've got another small quibble. This is something that George could easily fix about Willow. When we cut back to the fire, this is like a classic. This felt like Temple of Doom, or it's just like that scene where everyone's sitting around the fire. Such a George Lucas thing. But I hate how Val Kilmer says "King of Kashmir."
Oh yeah.
Why couldn't you come up with a fake place?
Yeah. Why did he go with the real place?
You know, it's so easy to come up. I could come up with a great fantasy world name in like a second.
Okay, come up with one.
Levittown.
That's not bad. Oh, you know what we forgot to mention? You mentioned like Temple of Doom. That Pat Roach, who plays General Kale, was in Raiders of the Lost Ark in Temple of Doom as well.
What? Who does he play in those? Wait a second.
In Raiders of the Lost Ark, he plays the Nazi
he's the bald guy that gets chopped up by the propeller?
Yep, and he's also the guy that gets shot when he does like the sword play. Yeah, Pat Roach.
That's that guy.
That's that
my God. I can't believe I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Look, if you get nothing out of this podcast, you got that.
That's true.
I'm going to start telling
Pat
people
Roach.
out on the street. I'm going to be like Willow when he's like, can you spare some milk? I'm like, did you know that Pat Roach was also the get out of here, E? So then we get to the island. This is a classic bit here.
Oh, well,
Rusty,
why didn't you tell us why they have to go to the island? We didn't even mention why.
Well, they've got to see Finn Rizal. She's a famous wizard in the area. And this island, Rusty, didn't this remind you of the island in the middle of that lake in Massapequa that I always have wanted to travel to via boat?
You could have just easily waded through the water and got there, but you never did.
This summer, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get a kayak. I'm going to that island, and I'm going to set up my own government.
But with Finn Rizal, what was the game plan for her? That she was, besides, what magic did she possess? Just to take down the queen?
Yeah, I think that, and get some advice.
You know what we forgot to mention from the High Elwyn, that he gave Willow 3 magic acorns. Oh, we did mention that, and he only uses 2 of them in the film. And there was a third one that was used in a scene on the way to the island.
I believe it's on the way back from the island.
Back from the island, yes. Not that it matters. Did you actually? Oh, you don't have the Blu-ray, right? You could actually watch that scene, that deleted scene of where the boat tips over, and is it like a shark or whatever it is?
It's like a shark fish boy.
Yeah, and you can watch that scene where he uses the acorn on it.
I remember it from the comic novelization, and this fish creature cut out of the film, just like the octopus from the Goonies, famously cut out of that.
Everyone knew you were saying that. Everyone knew when you were about to go.
I like to imagine these two guys hanging out and being like, "Oh, were you cut out of the film?" Yes, I was cut out as well. Look, what can I say? Hey, when they get to the island, they're in for a little surprise, kind of like a classic Yoda situation. Mm-hmm. Finn Rizal is not what they expect.
No.
That's Rusty? Don't know. I expected something more grand, less fuzzy.
In fact, Finn Rizal is an animal.
Shrew.
And this animal is the common brush-tail possum.
Oh.
Now, this was introduced to New Zealand in the 1850s, Rusty, to establish a fur industry. But in the subtropical climate of New Zealand, and with few to no natural predators, it thrived to the extent that it became a major agricultural and conservational pest. It's actually the most widespread marsupial in Australia. Now, I got to tell you something about this. Possum. I was in Australia. I was walking in the park, and I saw one of these things.
Really?
And you know what? I thought it was a monkey. I thought this was a monkey until learning about this film. I didn't think it was a traditional monkey. I thought it was like a lemur. I even texted my friend, there's a lemur like sitting on my foot. It turns out it was one of these possums. Now, how common are these possums? Well, there's 30 million of them in New Zealand. Wow. There's only 5 million people. That means there's 6 for every person in New Zealand.
So you think they were shooting in New Zealand and they just came across that and like, oh, we'll use that for her first transformation?
That's the fucked up thing is they actually were supposed to use the actress the whole time, and then this possum wandered onto set, and George said, "This possum's a natural. Give this possum the part." And the lady was like, "I've been in this business for this many years, and a possum is replacing me."
Do you remember when Finn Rizal says that she's a beautiful sorceress? You're like, I can't wait to see what she looks like. Were you let down when you got to see what she became over the years?
Hey, what can I say? I'm an optimist. Every time I think Finn Rizal is going to be Giselle.
Believe me, it could have been worse.
So what happens? Willow brings her back from the island. And
back from the island, gets immediately captured. A lot of capturings in this.
Yeah.
When they grab Willow and the guy says, "Over here."
Yeah.
It sounded like Mortal Kombat.
Get over here.
Yeah. You know what I always thought, though? They have the baby. Why take any chances and take prisoners? Just execute both Willow and Mad Mardigan.
In our modern world, they would. Our world is so much more brutal now. And people would be like, they broke the law. They had what was coming. That baby shouldn't have been born with that birthmark. That baby knew it should have been born with that birthmark.
It's coming straight from the streets of New York.
That's bad news.
I think the big scene of the movie, one of the more exciting scenes, is the whole scene on the snow mountain.
This, in fact, in the some of the posters, it's featured very prominently.
Yeah,
love any kind of sledding.
Yeah, just like they're locked in cages. We're not quite sure how they're going to get out of it, but they do. The brownies come back.
Yes, the brownies can pick the lock pretty easily. They get out. They have a battle. They end up sledding on a shield down the mountain. Mm-hmm. Now, when they cut to the shots of them sledding down the mountain, looks a bit like the killer from the film Curtains.
It does, yeah.
In the ice skating scene, like Willow is like a dummy. It looks just like that killer.
I was thinking the mannequin head in Birdman of Alcatraz.
But it just escalates. Like I said, it's like very Spielbergian, like the way it escalates, and like, they'll get out of one danger just to add to another danger, and then it ends up ending with Mad Matter coming down as like the big snowball. And but whenever that happens, all I could think is like, man, he's so inappropriately dressed for the weather.
He always is. You failed to mention that in that scene is where the brownies hit Mad Mardigan in the face with that love potion.
Oh yeah.
And when he sneaks into her, Sorcia's tent, he falls in love with her instead of rescuing the baby, and he starts spouting poetry.
Yes, I liked it.
And she's she's like head over heels pretty instantly, but she's a little apprehensive. She's like, all right, is this for real? Like, what's going on here? But she's eating it up.
Yeah, she just needed some love. She just needed some love, clearly.
Well, if Mad Mardigan was spouting poetry to you, you'd be eating it up.
At this point, I would be happy if a troll was spouting poetry to me.
But how come the poetry in this film is so much more impactful than it is with Anakin Skywalker in the prequels?
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
That was actually very impactful for me, that moment. Rusty, as you know, I used to be a beach bum. Now I can't stand the stuff. I'm pro erosion. So it's like they sled down this mountain. They should have made a lot more time than they did on these guys because they catch up really quick.
Yeah.
And they end up hiding in the basement with Eric and the remains of his army who have been decimated. Mm-hmm. And a funny moment, a subtle funny moment, is when Sorcia starts coming downstairs. Mad Mardigan takes her and puts like a knife to her throat. And one of her soldiers goes, "Sorcia! Sorcia!" And you could just tell by the way the guy says it that he likes her and has no chance.
That's what you took away from that scene.
Man, and that guy was just like, "Oh, hey, next village, I'm going to pillage it so hard. I'm not even going to look at her. I'm not even going to look at her. And then I'm going to look at her, and she's going to be looking at me because she's going to be admiring my work, all the pillaging I'm doing. Oh, she's not looking at me. I just cut this child's throat." Well, if a tree falls in the forest.
You mentioned medieval weaponry before. If you were a medieval warrior, what would you be bringing into battle?
When I used to play Dungeons & Dragons, the people that I played with used to shit talk my character behind his back because he was so lame. He was a gnome named Clunk who rode a bat.
I hate this character.
So then they are here.
Cool,
oh, sorry,
that's a cool G.I. Joe figure, though. If you saw that in packaging, you'd buy that.
Oh yeah, a guy who rides a bat, that'd be great.
That bat accessory is worth it alone, no matter how lame your outfit is.
For some reason, I always imagined him dressed as a gummy bear, the grumpy one. If you remember that, the grumpy tough one.
Oh, I kind of do, yeah. All right, so what happened?
So then they take Sorcia hostage for really a brief moment. They go through the canyons, matte painting, but pretty well done. But then Sorcia gives Mad Mardigan one of her patented horrible kicks. All of her kicks in this movie are really, but this one especially is really, really bad.
What, the one to the groin before she takes off?
No. Like he's already on the ground. She gives him another kick, but it's like she's not even balanced right. You have to. This is a great video podcast.
When they're in that scene though, and when they're hiding in the floorboards, did you feel the tension of that scene?
I did. Bit of a Schindler's List feel.
Yeah, it was pretty effective. especially when the baby starts crying and then Finn Rizal comes in as the crow.
Oh yeah, that was well done. That was well done. So they arrive at Tir Asleen, and not the biggest deal made about. A lot was cut out of this movie, and I feel like the people being frozen in Tir Asleen, they probably should have done like a one beat that actually ended up in the film where they're like restored, or where they're talking about more about what happened, or doesn't it seem like curiously unfinished?
It's falling apart. Open your eyes.
So then the big scene where Matt Mardigan, he finds all the weapons and armor. Classic thing when you're a kid. Any scene where like the hero finally finds all the weapons, you were like, yeah.
Do you remember, did you actually set up booby traps when you were younger?
Oh yeah, big time.
When you were left home alone, did you set them up just in case of an intruder?
I remember one time I was in Maine and someone robbed the local bank. And so the cops came around and were like, everyone be on guard. And I was like a really little kid. I got totally terrified. So I built a bunch of booby traps, and like all of them leading up to this like little tent I made, which I was just sitting inside with like a BB gun. I was like, imagine a bank robber who's like on the run encountered me.
They would laugh.
It's like, kid, I'm not after you. Obviously, I was robbing a fucking bank.
I love the thought of the cops showing up and being like, kid, we need you. We heard about you.
We're the Monster Squad.
But so basically, Tir Asleen is just basically to set up the big set piece, which is like the biggest one in the film, where the dragon comes out, the trolls quite famously attack.
I always hated those trolls. They were horrendous looking.
You mean horrendous looking, like scary looking?
Yeah, they kind of looked like what did they look like? I can't think of what they look like, but they're just like gross looking. Like,
yeah, they are gross looking.
They were like physically disgusting.
I was reading an AV Club article, and they said they referred to the trolls, and they said basically stuntmen in gorilla masks. And I'm like, well, who do you want to be in the masks? Laurence Olivier? Really annoyed me. So Kale, it all leads up to we have the big battle with the two-headed dragon thing, which I guess we should point out was called the Ebor Sisk, another reference to critics, a mixture of Siskel and Ebert. Very stop motion-esque. Looks very, very Harryhausen.
Yeah, as a kid, I loved it, but watching it recently, it's kind of, like you said, it just looks, not the greatest effect.
I mean, it doesn't really hold up. Especially, it's funny because very classic Spielberg or Lucas kind of thing where Matt Mardigan is facing this impossible army, and the dragon comes up behind him, and everyone reacts to that, but he thinks they're afraid of him.
Yeah,
that's been in all of their movies. But the funny thing is, even when he first appears in that shot before the dragon appears, the shot looks fake. So you're like, oh, something fake is going to come in, and then like the dragon comes behind. So yeah,
I still like what he points out though with them. The one thing with the trolls, I always thought they were going to be a little more than what we got.
Yeah,
like I didn't know if they were going to possess like superhuman strength, but the only thing they really had was that they could climb walls.
But that is a great shot, when that one shot where you see the troll like crawling across the wall. Always been kind of one of the haunting images of my life.
What kind of dingleberries do you think they had?
Probably similar to mine.
Why is it when you hit a troll, it turns into a fucking two-headed dragon?
Oh, that is like the Game Genie moment of the troll world.
Oh,
like, in Simon's Quest, when you had to go to like the end of the board and then kneel down, and like a wind would come and get you. Like trolls, like this is a huge advantage to them, but you really have to end up in a very specific circumstance to get turned into the two-headed dragon thing.
Wait, were the trolls though the ones that turned all the Tir Asleen? I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but turned them into stone or into rock?
No, that was Bavmorda.
And then the trolls overran it. Where were the trolls? Where did they come from? Were they just hanging out outside the walls of the city? And then they're like, oh, here's our chance. Let's go.
Well, longtime listeners of this podcast know that I'm always referencing 18th century poetry, Rusty.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like William Blake says that a unchanging mind is like a standing pool of water where reptiles breed. That is a lot like trolls and Tir Asleen.
It's funny. I was telling Jen today that if we had an IMDb page, there would be so many continuity errors with the show, because you're always saying, and this is a moment where you're just like, oh, for longtime listeners, they know. None of it's true.
None of it's true. None of it's true. None of it's true. Just rate and review. That's my little jingle I do.
That's on the box art.
But so this whole set piece is basically just to set up that Kale's going to get the baby at the end of it. It's just the end of the second act, big scene.
Yeah.
And Kale ends up, riding away like, I've got the baby. So then we end up at the conclusion, which is outside Babmorda's castle. This really pig moment coming up in the film when
I love it. The effects look actually great in that.
They really do. Really a pig moment for us.
Did she know she was turning her own daughter? She did, right? She knew she turned on her.
Yeah, she did. There's kind of that moment, which is kind of pig for the character, where she decides to, she's abandoning her daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that is a great scene.
Yeah, really pig scene. Finally notices it. So Bavmorda begins the ritual. Why is Bavmorda dressed like a mummy? Do you notice this?
I wrote that down. I was going to ask you why. Yeah, why are she wrapped up like a mummy?
It takes me 3 hours to get ready every day. Man, so there's all the intrigue outside the castle. There's the big scene where Willow is changing Finn Rizal back to her normal form, and she ends up old and confused, and that's how I feel when I look in the mirror. Too easy. The final battle, Batmore is going to send Elora down into the Netherworld. Would have been a great twist if she succeeded, and then it cut to the Netherworld, and it was like, America 1988.
Oh wow, that would have been awesome.
It's our world.
That would have been amazing. Oh my god, that would have been a fantastic idea.
So Willow famously pulls the disappearing pig trick. Pretty satisfying ending, I think.
Willow actually pulls some magic on Bavmorda and throws the acorn at her.
Would have been incredible if the acorn worked.
Yeah, I always liked that scene as a kid too, with her hand cracking, but she's like holding it. She's like holding it so it doesn't spread down her arm. It's like, oh, would that work?
If that had worked, that would have been like when Han Solo sees Darth Vader eating dinner in Empire Strikes Back, and he shoots him. If he had actually killed him, that's what that would have been like.
I like how you described that as eating dinner. Boba Fett is watching.
They're both like, neither of us are going to take our helmets off, so it's going to be awkward. Get some guys in here to eat.
We would be honored if you would join us.
The final, very, very George Lucas celebration kind of scene at the end here. Before Willow goes home, like basically the Star Wars medal scene of Willow. I love how Willow gets the book from Finn Rizal, right?
Yeah.
Do you notice he opens to the last page? He's like, I got to see how it ends. Just in case my journey home doesn't work out well, I got to see how this book ends.
I missed that, but that's funny. I thought it was going to be a more of an emotional ending, like him and Mad Mardigan, who we don't know how long this journey took place, but it seems like there would have been more of a farewell. They kind of dropped the ball on this scene. They could have, at this point, it's earned like a fond farewell, and they kind of rushed through it. I mean, they're at that two hour mark. They had to wrap it up quickly. Kind of famously, Sorcia's father is in the scene. He's standing next to her, yeah, because he's one of the frozen guys who's been unfrozen at Tir Asleen. But all this stuff has happened off screen, so it's kind of just like a weird thing. So what happened when he came to? What questions was he asking? And who's this guy you're supposedly dating? It's probably gonna be off and on, but I am now raising this baby, I guess. Yeah, she's raising the person that's like usurping her position. Man, when Willow comes home, this was a satisfying moment, though. How come Kaya's hair didn't grow back in that amount of time? I was going to say the same thing. Her hair looks sickly. But she's been starving. Willow never fucking did his planted his seed, so they all starved. Imagine he came home. Imagine what the ending we got is where he came home and he's all excited to see his kids and Kaya, and they moved on. She's like with Burglecut now. I could kind of imagine Willow's life after the events of this movie being a bit like, do you remember the ending of Walkabout? I do. You think so? Yeah, because I'm always struck by the ending of that movie. Jenny Agutter, she's been through hell. We see that she's survived it, but we see that now her life is like kind of mundane and she misses that adventure. Like, is Willow really going to be happy planting seeds? I thought you were talking about when they're swimming naked together. You wanted to see Willow swimming naked? I'm not opposed to it. You know what's funny in the book, the sequel, is a year later he goes to Tir Asleen for Elora Danan's birthday. Oh, I remember that party.
I did poppers and banged an Ebor Sisk, and a bunch of trolls watched and jerked off.
Cool party.
It's a hell of a party. But like he leaves his family again. So like, is it just like a here we go again kind of thing? Because then all hell breaks loose. How many times are they going to milk that with Willow?
You can tell that Willow's like trying to keep those worlds separate.
You could tell after like at 11 months, he's like starting to get that itch. He's just like, oh, come on, Alora's birthday just roll around so I could do something.
Yeah, he's like, well, if Mad Mardigan and Sorsha break up, it's like, I've never mentioned Kaya to Sorsha before, so she doesn't even fucking know I'm married.
You know, it's funny. It's another ripoff of Lord of the Rings because it's kind of like Bilbo Baggins, like where he's just like itching for an adventure. He's just like, I just need to get out there again.
So over the credits, they play that song again from Willow's Village, which maybe if I can isolate the lyrics to Blues Traveler and put it over that song, we can see if it works.
Why you wanna give me a run around? Is it a surefire?
Whoops, that went as well as my last date. Rusty, there was some big news just last month. It was announced that there might be a Willow streaming series on Disney Plus.
Oh God. Are there really people out there clamoring for more Willow?
Yes, Warwick Davis.